Hello, my name is Ryan Stevenson. I'm Senior Technical Trainer with Best Equipment Company. Today we're going to discuss winterization of a single engine Vac-Con unit. To begin our winterization process, we need to get all the water off of the unit itself. So to do that, we're going to ensure that our drain is open. We're going to come down and turn our cold weather drain ball valve to the on position to allow water to drain out. And we're going to drain from our main tank up here. So we either have a ball valve or a gate valve at the front of the water tanks that we will open to drain all the water out of the water tanks themselves. Once all our water is drained from the water tanks, we can move up to our water pump area, and there is a ball valve located at the back section directly behind our strainer at the lower side of the water pump that we need to turn on in order to drain the water from the circuit. Here is our drain valve.
So that's closed, open.
Now that we have all our drains open, our water tanks are empty, our water manifold underneath is empty through our cold weather drain, and our water pump ball valve has drained the lower section of our water pump. We now need to ensure that all of our ball valves are in the off position, including our air purge, debris tank flush out of equipped, hydro excavation circuit, and the ball valves at the front. We have our low pressure handgun circuit here, as well as our pump control and our rotor control ball valve at the front of the unit that we'll discuss in a little while. In order to winterize the unit, we're going to use air to push through the circuits in lieu of water. We do have a connection here with our air purge port if you have a water manifold in this section. If we do not have a water manifold here, there will be a air purge valve similar to this fitting on the rear side of the water pump assembly. There will be a hose attached to that with a lanyard. This is air supplied from the chassis air tanks, so we can air purge in the field if need be. We take our air hose, connect to our air purge fitting. Once our air purge fitting is connected, we are then ready to open our air purge ball valve and purge each one of our circuits individually. Okay, now we're going to winterize the rotor hose section of our Vac-Con unit. So to begin, we have our air purge hooked up in the back to our air purge valve on, and our line hooked up to our connection. Then we can come up front, ensure that our rotor hose is secured to the transport coupler at the front of the unit. For safety, I'm going to come up, turn my hose reel ball valve on, allowing that water or air to purge through the hose assembly itself, and I'm going to turn my pump control to the on position, blocking that return to tank. So I'm forcing that air out through the rotor hose assembly. Once I do that, I'm going to have a steady stream of water coming out of the bottom of the transport coupler. Once I start getting air and water mixed out of that section, I'm going to come up here, I'm going to close my hose reel ball valve to the off position, disconnect my rotor hose from my transport coupler, and we're going to secure that to itself on the reel. Just like our low pressure and our high pressure hoses, as we air purge this, the lower sections of hose, that water is laying in the belly of that hose. The air went over the top of it, so we still have water in here that can freeze. We need to get that water out, and that's what we're going to do next by attaching the hoses together and rotating this reel clockwise or retracting the hose back onto the reel to roll that water out. So we're going to disconnect our hose from the transport coupler. Once our hose is disconnected from the transport coupler, we're going to secure it to the hose itself using either a couple zip ties if you have them, or duct tape or whatever you have available to you to secure the hose to itself. As we roll it backwards, we don't want the hose to unroll off of the reel. All right, now that we have our hose secured together, we're ready to rotate the reel backwards or retract the hose back onto the hose reel in order to roll that water that's laying in the bottom of the hose out. We're going to do this while we have air flowing through the circuit, and we're going to continue this until we have free air flowing through the circuit. I can turn my speed up on the reel by using my speed control knob in order to get that to go faster. The farther I have this turned out, the faster the reel itself is going to rotate. And I'm going to continue rotating this until all of the water is coming out and I only have free air blowing from the end of the hose. Once we have all the water purged out of the circuit, I can come up front and I can turn my ball valves, my hose reel ball valve, and my pump control ball valve, both to the off position. I'll turn my pump control to off, and I'll turn my hose reel to off. At that point, the hose is winterized. All right, now that our air purge is hooked up, we are ready to begin with our low pressure handgun circuit. In order to do that, we're going to have the reel to a height that we can reach the hose assembly. We're going to make sure that our handgun located in our toolbox is drained and free of any water by pulling the trigger to make sure we have no water trapped in the gun itself. We are then going to go to the front of the unit. On the front corner of the bumper, we're going to have a ball valve that we need to open for our low pressure handgun circuit. We'll open that ball valve. We'll come back here. We'll turn our second handgun ball valve on. That activates our reel. And we can make sure that the pump control ball valve on the front hose reel is in the pressurized position or the on position for our water pump control. From there, we are ready to start the air purge process, making sure that the hose is pointed in a safe direction, that no one is in front of the air path. We're going to open our air purge ball valve. We're now going to have air coming out of our air purge circuit using the chassis air. While I have air flowing through this circuit, I need to make sure that I pull all of the hose assembly off of the unit. If I do not do this step, I will have water that lays in the bottom half of the coils and could potentially freeze in the hose. So I want to roll all 50 feet of hose off of the reel, have air blowing through the circuit until I have clean air coming out of the hose itself. While I have air blowing through the hose, I am then going to retract it back onto the reel with air flowing through the circuit. Once my reel is retracted, I have air only coming out. I can turn my ball valve for the air purge back to the off position. We're now going to discuss winterizing the hydro excavation circuit on your Vac-Con combination unit. To begin this process, we have the air hose hooked up to our air purge assembly. We have all our ball valves closed at the moment. To begin the operation, we're going to go up front, turn our pump control to the on position. Then we're going to come back here, pull our hose off of the reel assembly, make sure we have all the hose off the reels so we have no water trapped inside the hose when we begin our air purge process. Before we turn the air purge on, we need to ensure that we have control of the end of the hose. We can come back here, turn our hydro excavation ball valve to the on position, and then we would turn our air purge to the on position as well. At that point, we now have air flowing through our hose. We're going to retract our hose back onto the reel, ensuring that we have air only coming out. When we're done with that operation, we're going to turn our air purge to the off position. We're going to turn our hydro excavation control valve to the off position, and we're going to go back up front and turn our pump control to the off position as well. So now that we have our low pressure and our high pressure circuits winterized, we're ready to winterize our debris tank flush out circuit if equipped. In order to do that, first thing we're going to do is open our debris tank flush out ball valve, and then we're going to open our air purge ball valve to allow airflow through the lines back to our manifold in the tank. We're going to listen for airflow coming into the debris tank body itself. Once I hear air in that circuit, I can come up here, turn my debris tank flush out to the off position and turn my air purge to the off position. So once we've air purged our low pressure circuit, our hydro excavation circuit, we have our debris tank flush out purged, we have all of our drain valves open, including our tank and our cold weather manifold drain, we still have water trapped inside of the water pump. So when we air purge this, when we hook this hose up to air purge, we're blowing water off the exhaust side of the water pump assembly. The lower section, we've drained the lower side of the water pump with our drain at the beginning of this series. We have air purging across the top, but we have water trapped in each one of our cylinders. So one of the last steps we do is we need to start the water pump assembly, allow those cylinders to rotate, push that water up into the exhaust section so we can push that back to our tanks. So with our pump control on the front in the off position, we're going to open our air purge ball valve. So we now have air flowing over the exhaust sections, and we're going to start the water pump assembly. Depending whether you have a single engine unit, a dual engine unit, transfer case unit, these are all started through different procedures that we'll go through in another section. Okay, to start our water pump, to get that water that's trapped in the cylinders out, we need to engage the pump. Again, this is a single engine unit, so we're going to use our water pump stroke engagement on the front of the truck. When I push and hold this for 2 to 3 seconds, we're going to get the first light to light up, which is quarter stroke. We're going to hold again. It will go to half stroke, 3/4, and full stroke. We don't need to go full operation. All we need to do is get those cylinders moving for 10 or 15 seconds to get that water moved out of the cylinders up into the exhaust section of the head so the air can take it back to the tanks. Once we're completed, we're going to de-stroke the pump and we're ready to move on to the next process. To purge our water pump on an Omnibus unit, we're going to come to the front joystick control station, and the upper right button on the joystick is our start and stop for the auxiliary engine itself. I'm going to push and hold this. We're going to see the red light begin to flash. The engine is going to start and our water pump is driving at that point. We're going to allow this to run for 10 or 15 seconds to purge that trapped water in those cylinders, to get it into the exhaust section, to allow that air purge to take it out. Okay, on a dual engine unit, dual engine combination unit, to purge the water out of our water pump, we're going to come to our front control panel assembly. We're going to turn our ignition switch to on for the auxiliary engine, and we're going to go to the start cycle and start our auxiliary engine. We're going to allow this to run for 10 to 15 seconds, allow that water pump to purge the water out of those cylinders. Once we're completed, we can turn the auxiliary engine to the off position, and we're completed with the air or the purge of the water pump. And that concludes our winterization of the unit. If you have any additional questions, please contact Best Equipment Company at 800-372-BEST.